Do you ever get that strange, sometimes subtle, almost imperceptible feeling that something is missing in your life, even when outwardly everything seems in order? A certain emptiness, an unnamed restlessness, a sense of just going through the motions, as if your life were a script written by someone else. You might have a good job, a family, friends, health, and yet deep down, a quiet voice whispers, "Is this all there is?" If this feeling sounds familiar, you're not alone. And perhaps you're experiencing what one of history's most original and provocative philosophers called silent despair. Today we're diving into the thought of Soren Kierkegaard to understand this very human condition, and more importantly, to bravely ask ourselves, are you living the life you truly want, or are you just following the social script? Kierkegaard, a 19th-century Danish philosopher, is an absolutely fascinating and fundamental figure for understanding modernity and ourselves. He's considered by many to be the father of existentialism, the philosophical movement that places individual human existence, freedom, choice, anguish, responsibility, and the search for authenticity at the center of reflection in a world that often seems to have lost its certainties. A fierce critic of his time, and ours. Kierkegaard lived in a seemingly orderly and religious Copenhagen, but he saw a profound spiritual crisis beneath that surface. He fiercely criticized what he called Christendom, an official, lukewarm, socially convenient Christianity, but one empty of passion and individual commitment. And he also criticized the crowd, the herd mentality, the conformity that nullifies the individual. His writings are unique. He often used pseudonyms, adopting different voices and perspectives to explore the complexities of the human soul. His language is passionate, ironic, poetic, deeply personal, and at times disconcerting. He didn't want to give us ready-made answers, but to awaken us, provoke us, force us to face the fundamental questions of our own existence. Silent despair, the most common and least diagnosed illness of our era. What is it anyway? When Kierkegaard speaks of despair, he isn't referring only to common sadness or clinical depression as we understand it today, though there may be connections. For him, despair is something much deeper. It's a disease of the spirit, a sickness unto death, title of one of his most important books. But pay attention, this death isn't necessarily physical death. It's the death of the authentic self, the death of the possibility of becoming who you truly are. The nature of Kierkegaardian despair. Despair, in its essence, arises from a fundamental disharmony in the self. The human being, for Kierkegaard, is a complex synthesis of finite and infinite, of temporal and eternal, of necessity and possibility. Despair happens when this synthesis doesn't relate in a balanced and authentic way to itself, and for Kierkegaard, who was a deeply Christian yet critical thinker, with the power that established it, that is, with God. The various faces of despair and how it hides. Kierkegaard describes several subtle and not so subtle forms of despair. The despair of not wanting to be oneself, the flight to the social script. This is perhaps the most common and insidious form of despair in our society. It's when the person, scared by the responsibility and loneliness of being a unique individual, flees from themselves. They prefer to conform to the crowd, to what everyone does, to social expectations, to prefabricated roles. They wear masks, follow the script, and in the process, lose contact with their deepest self, with their singular passions and vocations. They become a copy, a number. The despair of wanting to be oneself in a defiant, proud, and self-sufficient way. Less common, but also a form of despair.
It's when the individual, in a kind of defiance or Promethean pride, tries to build a totally autonomous, self-sufficient self, denying any dependence or relation with the transcendent, or trying to be the absolute captain of their soul without recognizing the limits of the human condition. The despair of not knowing that one is in despair, the silent despair par excellence. This is the most treacherous, and for Kierkegaard, the most dangerous. The person is in profound spiritual despair, but has no awareness of it. Their life may seem normal on the outside. They may even be considered successful in society's eyes, have a good job, a family, consume, have fun, but there's an inner emptiness, a lack of genuine passion, an absence of a true and unified self. It's the despair of the man on the street, of the conformist. The crowd is untruth. Why following the social script makes us sick and distances us from ourselves. Kierkegaard had a strong and controversial phrase, the crowd is untruth. What did he mean by that?
The crowd as anonymity and irresponsibility. He wasn't speaking ill of groups of people or of society itself. The crowd, Mængden in Danish, for him was more a mentality, the mentality of blind conformity, of anonymity, where no one is truly responsible for anything, of thoughtlessness, of following the dominant opinion without questioning. In the crowd, individual responsibility dissolves, and truth, which for Kierkegaard is always personal and passionate, is lost. The crushing pressure to be normal and accepted. Society, with its norms, its expectations, its scripts of success and happiness, exerts enormous pressure on the individual to fit in, to be normal, to not stand out. The fear of judgment, of ridicule, of isolation, of being considered strange or unsuccessful often leads us to repress our most authentic inclinations, our unique talents, our true passions, in exchange for the security and approval of the crowd. The loss of singularity and the dominance of the impersonal. By conforming, by following the social script without personal and critical appropriation, we lose our singularity, that which makes us unique and irreplaceable individuals. We begin to live an impersonal life, as if it were ours, but which is in fact an echo of the voices and values of others. When we live primarily for the approval of others, or to fulfill a role that we didn't choose with our heart, or to achieve a success that has no true meaning for us, we are, according to Kierkegaard, in a profound state of despair, even if silent. We are sick in the soul because we are not being who we really are. But Kierkegaard isn't just a diagnostician of soul diseases. He also points us, albeit indirectly and often paradoxically, to paths for healing, for emerging from despair, and for achieving a more authentic and meaningful existence. Anguish, as in angst in Danish, angst, for Kierkegaard, is a fundamental and inevitable feeling of human existence. It's different from fear, which has a defined object. I'm afraid of spiders, of heights. Anguish is the giddiness of freedom, the sensation of dizziness we experience before the infinite possibilities of our existence and the total responsibility we have to choose our own being without guarantees. It arises when we confront nothingness, with the absence of a divine or social script that tells us exactly what to do. But, and here's the crucial point, anguish isn't something purely negative for Kierkegaard. It's also what awakens us from our dogmatic slumber, from our silent despair. It's a sign that we're starting to realize our freedom and the urgent need to make authentic choices. The way out of despair for Kierkegaard begins with choice, the radical choice to want to be oneself, to assume responsibility for one's own life, to become an individual. And this choice cannot be made in a cold or calculating way. It needs to be made with inner passion, with our whole being.
Truth is subjectivity. For Kierkegaard, the truth that truly matters isn't objective and impersonal facts or grand abstract philosophical systems. The truth that transforms and saves is the truth that becomes subjective, that is, that which the individual appropriates with passion, that becomes alive for them, that shapes their way of existing in the world. It's not enough to know the truth, it's necessary to be the truth. Kierkegaard is famous for his concept of the leap of faith. In the context of his Christian philosophy, this refers to the individual, risky decision and beyond purely rational understanding to relate to God, to trust in the paradox of faith, like Abraham in Fear and Trembling, who was willing to sacrifice his son, Isaac, by a divine order that defied all human ethics. But even for those who don't share Kierkegaard's specific religious faith, the idea of the leap can be understood more broadly as the courage to make radical existential choices, to embrace the uncertain, to break with the conformism of the crowd, to commit to a life project that is authentically yours, even if that involves risk, solitude, and the absence of external guarantees. The great existential task for Kierkegaard is to escape annihilation in the crowd, which he saw as untruth, and to become a singular individual, someone who lives their life uniquely, authentically, and intensely responsibly before their own conscience, and, for him, before God. It's to embrace the solitude and glory of being a self. Practical steps to overcome silent despair. Practice honest and courageous self-examination. Reserve moments of silence and introspection to ask yourself with total honesty, is this life I am living truly mine? Or am I just fulfilling a role that was imposed on me or that I adopted out of fear or convenience? Identify the social scripts you are following without questioning. What are the social, family, cultural, or professional expectations that you have internalized as absolute truths or as the only possible path? Challenge them. Listen attentively to your anguish. It can be your best counselor. Don't flee from that feeling of discomfort, of boredom, of emptiness, or of inadequacy. Instead of anesthetizing it with distractions, use it as a warning sign, a call to examine your choices and seek a more authentic path. Dare to make small, authentic choices every day. Transformation doesn't need to be a cataclysmic event. Start small. What small choice today, in your way of dressing, in what you will read, with whom you will converse, how you will use your free time, can bring you a little closer to your true self and move you away from the script? Cultivate and follow your inner passion. What truly moves you and makes you feel alive? What sets your heart on fire? What makes you lose track of time? What gives you a sense of purpose? Even if it's not socially valued or lucrative, make more space for it in your life. Passion is the antidote to boredom and to silent despair. Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, doesn't offer us easy answers, nor a smooth path to happiness. On the contrary, he shakes us, pulls us out of the comfort zone of silent despair, and confronts us with the urgent, individual, and untransferable task of becoming who we really are, of living a life that is truly ours. He shows us that the silent despair of a life not lived authentically, of a life spent only following the social script, is the true sickness unto death for the human spirit. But he also points us with a contagious passion to the way to healing, the courage to choose oneself, to embrace the anguish inherent in freedom, and to live with an inner passion that burns the chains of conformism and illuminates our singularity. Living the life we really want isn't following a script, but having the courage to write our own story, with all its risks, all its pains, and all its glory. And you, Have you ever felt like you were living a silent despair or just following the social script without questioning? What small leap of authenticity, inspired by Kierkegaard, could you take today towards a life that is more truly yours? Leave your journey, your doubts, and your reflections here in the comments. This is a space for us to share our quests. If this deep exploration of Kierkegaard's thought poked you, inspired you, and gave you courage to seek your true self, leave your like, share this video with all the people you think need this liberating and challenging message, and subscribe to the channel for more philosophical reflections that help us live with more meaning and passion. A big hug, and until next time, may your life be increasingly yours and increasingly less a script.